Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill is in a pitched battle to succeed Governor Phil Murphy. When you look at the polls and what people are telling us, affordability is really the key issue for everybody in the state. I know you've been talking a lot about it. One of the things you've talked about is universal health care or childcare. And I'm wondering, I know that from reading about it, you want to limit people's exposure to about 7% of their income. Is that doable given the fact that you're calling on the federal government to provide the funds for childcare?
So I'll continue to work with our federal delegation to push for federal funding. Right now, what we're doing in New Jersey is working on pre-K throughout the state, because we know those first 5 years of a child's life are some of the times when they learn the most. And so setting them up well for school is so important and can provide such a boost to students as they start their career in kindergarten. But that also means that we're going to have to push in more services for infants and toddlers, because that kind of upends the model we have now, because right now infant-based childcare is more expensive than in-state college tuition. And so too many families are having to make this choice between can they work or not.
But see, right now, the federal aid to childcare is really limited to low-income people. I'm wondering if in your childcare plan, you would have an income cap as to who could get free childcare or aid in childcare.
At the federal level, what I've been pushing for is to make sure it's available to everyone. And it's percentage based on your income. So, of course, if you make more money, there is a higher cost to it.
And it would be a 7% cap?
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, what I think we have to come to terms with, and I hear about it from chambers of commerce and businesses all the time, is this is a key economic driver right now.
Well, people say it's better easier for them to go to work if they have childcare.
Right, and too many parents are finding the high cost of childcare preventing them from going into the workforce or having to leave the workforce for a period of time. And we know that if a woman leaves the workforce for just 5 years, which is that birth to kindergarten time period, that can be a 20% hit on her entire income throughout her life.
So I guess I wonder what you make of the debate that's going on this side of the river about universal childcare and the claim by the leading person in the polls, Joe Mondani, about having universal childcare paid for by the city government and maybe with some state aid. Is there any possibility that New Jersey itself could come up with money that could fund some form of universal childcare in the state?
Well, what the governor's been working on right now is that pre-K, so 3- and 4-year-olds throughout the state, and making sure that they have the preschool so that they can get a good start on schools. Now, childcare earlier, a lot of the program I have would be incentivizing businesses, for example, to build out childcare through tax incentives, pushing into, in certain childcare deserts, infant-based childcare that we need so mothers can go back to work, or families and parents can go back to work. And then also fixing some of the ways in which the workforce is able to get their credits, because right now you have to pay for your credits. I would like to see some on-the-job training so you can be earning money as you're earning your credits.
So you're basically saying, though, that you don't think that the federal government, given the present climate in Washington, would look favorably on giving an increase in federal aid for childcare, especially in a blue state like New Jersey?
You know, we don't see signs of that. We see such mismanagement at the federal level. I think we've added another $1 trillion to the deficit in the most rapid pace that we've ever seen in the nation's history. So we see the deficit going up and yet costs going up for everyone, because generally I think what the president's doing is running an economy that benefits him. So I believe he and his family have made about $5 billion at this point in the short time he's been in office, while everyone pays more money. So with that in mind, that does not seem to be a focus of the Trump administration, is actually running a good economy or investing in working parents. That is something at the state level we're finding ways to do so that we can push in, so that we can run a resilient workforce.
So basically saying that you could have universal child care that would be with a 7% cap is right now a wish list, because you don't think you can get the federal government to do it?
I am hoping that we can move them, that once we win back the House of Representatives, that we can start to push more on better economic incentives for the workforce. Right now, we have the government shut down, so the Republican majorities in the House and the Senate with the president can't even keep the government open, so it's hard to see them moving forward on policies that are going to advance the workforce.
You say winning back the House. How difficult is it going to be? I know that the politics in New York are going to play a role, and the president is looking forward to the possibility that we'd have a Democratic Socialist mayor in New York City, and he hopes to use that to prevent Democrats from taking control of the House next November. How worried are you about the fact that if there is a Democratic Socialist mayor in New York City, the president will try to use that and make him a poster boy for why Democrats shouldn't be reelected?
So I'm sure the president's going to try to do that. But I think what we see in the two big statewide races that we have going on right now, New Jersey, my home state, and Virginia, we see, the electorate really wanting to have good governance, efficient government, driving down costs, taking on the economic attacks from Washington. I think that's where we see large electorates. New York City is a little different from maybe the electorate as a whole. And I think what we're seeing in New Jersey and Virginia is just a real desire to drive down costs and to take on the economic attacks from Washington.
So how difficult would it be, were you to be elected, to deal with a White House that has already shown that they would like to punish blue states? You've seen it happen with Gateway. You've seen it happen with a number of things. How will you forge a working relationship with the president if you get elected?
I think what we've seen is it's not just blue states. I mean, he is whole-scale wrecking the economy of the United States of America. So I have seen it in students who are coming forward and saying, I had a job offer. I was talking to an astrophysicist who said I had a job offer and that has been rescinded. We're seeing it the hundreds of thousands of layoffs. Because the jobs are drying up? Because jobs are drying up. And this is across the country.
Are you blaming tariffs or are you just blaming economic policy?
It's sort of, it's the tariffs, certainly. So I was talking to Chuck, a coffee store owner, who was telling me that a bag of coffee beans cost him about $2.50 until Trump, as he put it, got in a fight with the president of Brazil. And then the bag of beans went up to about $6.50, $7. He's not sure if his clients are going to take that on. So that imperils his small business. Big businesses who were just over a year ago, before Trump got into office, contemplating expanding. They were telling me they were going to need a bigger workforce, now are contracting and laying people off. So we're seeing that going on. We're also seeing then, the specific hits like you were describing with the Gateway Tunnel. That can be responsible for about 100,000 jobs in the region. So that's a huge economic hit. So at every turn, you see the president destroying the economy.
Do you think that there's any possibility that once the government shutdown ends, that the president will have second thoughts about terminating Gateway?
Well, my intention is to have him in court right away to give him second thoughts about it, because that is congressionally appropriated money that he should not be able to freeze.
Well, why are you waiting? Why don't you go in now?
I'm not the governor yet.
Good point. So in other words, you're saying that the minute...
My attorney general.
The minute you get into power, if you win, what's going to be one of the first things you try to do?
Exactly.
Because you have been called the tunnel obsessive Congresswoman.
Yes.
Why is this so important to you?
Well, because it is the biggest program of national significance. As I mentioned, it's responsible for about 100,000 jobs in the region. The Northeast Corridor is responsible for about 20% of the nation's GDP, so this is a national issue. And we also know that about 200,000 New Jerseyans take that tunnel every single day. And it's personal. My husband's one of them. So really making sure New Jerseyans don't face that summer of hell year after year after year is critically important. But it also, we have got to build out transportation across the state. And so if we are going to come up with the money to do that, we can't have this federal share withdrawn for the Gateway Tunnel.
Well, I want to talk to you more about it, but we're going to leave it right here for now. We'll be right back with more with Mikie Sherrill. We are back with Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill. I want to continue talking about transit. I know one of the big concerns in this part of the state is NJ Transit and the terrible service that people feel they're getting. How would you improve it?
So, yes, you are referring to what we in New Jersey call the summer of hell. We're on about our
It's
third
the winter
one.
of hell, the spring of hell.
Summer has gotten worse on the heavy rail lines. So the New Jersey Transit, and we use the Amtrak lines because we've had catenary wire problems because Amtrak hasn't kept up their rail. So I immediately started to demand that they do so. We got $300 million to invest federally in that rail so they could fix the catenary wires. And yet now we're having path problems. And that's a Port Authority issue. So I'll demand the Port Authority make better investments in path.
I see. It seems to me, though, that I've always wondered about why you fund NJ Transit from the New Jersey General Fund and from the budget. If you take a look at the MTA funds its programs through a whole basket of taxes, from 1/4% of the sales tax, the mortgage recording tax, the stock transfer tax, a gas tax, lots of taxes. They have lots of taxes. Why doesn't New Jersey do that? Because then you would come up with more money to fix NJ Transit. I mean, it's not just the rails. People complain about the cars, people complain about the service, how fast it is, how many trains run. It goes on and on and on.
And it used to be the best of the three.
When was
New Jersey
that?
Transit, unfortunately, it's been a
exactly?
minute. Certainly not recently. And you're exactly right. We need a dedicated source of funding.
So, I mean, why don't you copy what the MTA does? There's like tons of taxes. I mean, you know, in New York, they pay 8 3/4% taxes in sales tax. 1/4% goes to the MTA. That's a lot of money. Why doesn't New Jersey do something like that?
So New Jersey has really, I think, strained the taxation system to its breaking point. We have the highest corporate taxes in the nation right now. Simply looking to fair hikes in taxes is just not an option.
So how are you going to find money for NJ Transit?
So many places around the world that run some of the best transit systems worldwide do it through things like transit-oriented development, developing properties they have, putting parking lots on them, other leasable facilities, putting advertising on the side of buses and trains, I was speaking to a woman from South Korea who was saying, Mikey, you know, in South Korea, there's TVs on the buses so that you can do the advertising that way, maybe like you see in the taxis. So we have a lot of options.
I have to ask you this question. Who would want to put their sign on the side of an NJ Transit train? I mean, seriously.
We've already seen several. I think it's awesome because, I mean, I hate to say this, but often as you're taking a train, you find yourself in traffic, which is something else I want to address. But in the meantime, so you're a captive audience. As you're sitting there, there's the bus, there's the advertising. It's actually, I think, a really great way to advertise in this area.
And you also think you would do televisions?
I love that idea. And we see those in like taxi cabs now. So when you have that kind of captive audience, having advertising can be really lucrative.
So I know another one of your signature issues is to freeze electric rates, which have gone up 20% in the last year in New Jersey. But a lot of people think you can't do it. A lot of people say it's unconstitutional, that you're going to have problems doing it, especially since the power companies are private entities. How are you going to get a privately run for-profit company say, oh, I'm going to reduce the rates?
So this is something no other governor has done. I'm going to declare a state of emergency on utility costs because we are at the breaking point and the people of New Jersey are demanding, look, we need to address this immediately. Not in 10 years, not in a 5-year plan, but immediately. And yeah, I think my opponent immediately attacked it because he has no plan to do anything about it. But I'll tell you, when I said that, the utility companies put an open letter out saying that they do want to negotiate these prices with me, that they're interested in doing just that. We also have money coming in through the BPU that we can use to defray some of these costs. But then at the same time, I'm going to drive massive amounts of power into the grid because right now we are in a market. New York's in it as well. And the market prices are very, very expensive.
Where do you get the power from? I mean, is it nuclear? Is it wind that the president hates? Is it going to be more power coming from the grid? What?
So the fastest and cheapest way we can start to add power to the grid is solar and battery storage. So I'm immediately going to get to work with the legislature to cut through the red tape and permitting issues that have long plagued this area so that we can put solar on capped landfills, on rooftops, getting battery storage in those areas where we have good interconnectivity to immediately add it to the grid, and then in the first budget, start to put money towards modernizing our natural gas facilities so that we can drive up production and drive down carbon across the state. And then as a longer term plan, have nuclear. And we have several areas where we have traditionally had nuclear, where the communities are comfortable with that, so we can drive that into the grid as well.
What do you think of the proposal by Assemblywoman Katz, who's proposed taking a look at those data centers that use a lot of power and maybe giving them a surcharge?
You know, I was actually just talking about this morning with several policy leaders in the state, because we do have to come up with a plan. And I'm going to actually take a close look at that piece of legislation. Probably not in the next 12 days because that's the final days of my election. But I was just discussing that actual piece of legislation because we see part of the reason the market is so expensive is because Virginia has put in a ton of data centers, and that is sucking a lot of power out of our grid, making it very expensive. At the same time, though, New Jersey is an innovation state. We have always been a leader in innovation, and we want to continue to grow that as well. So we're going to have to find a balance.
So data isn't the only concern that people have. People are also concerned about online safety. I wonder what you plan to do about that. I mean, it's sort of intertwined, but seriously, a lot of people are concerned about hacking, about whether their data is safe. Every day you have somebody complaining about, I got a letter from X company that said that they hacked in and they have my
I hear this concern all the time. In fact, seniors have been coming to me because DOJ released a lot of Social Security information, so seniors are very concerned. They're often the targets of data collection and attacks. I've also heard from governors who have said that the president has demanded some of their election information, which includes things like driver's license information and addresses, Social Security numbers. And then, of course, my opponent was involved in a breach of my private military data, which he received illegally from the president's administration and then gave to a journalist, of all things. So we are seeing this at every level, which is why it's so important. Well, I'm going to both protect people's data. I will, like several governors I've spoken to, tell the president no when he tries to get into all of our state data. I'll protect it for the people here. But it's also, it's a little bit broader than that as far as what I'm looking at. I'm going to pass the Kids Online Safety Agenda. That will protect our kids online as well, because we see with these algorithms that they are pushing kids into some very bad places for mental health. We've seen testimony in the Senate about the horrible things children see, sometimes before they die by suicide, and their parents testifying to that. So we're also going to have a center of excellence, because right now the people that hold a lot of this data are the big tech companies. So in New Jersey, we are going to develop a center for this data so we can better act in this space, and I think be a real leader in this space for our kids.
So we have about 30 seconds left. Is there anything else you'd like to say about what you can actually do to accomplish in the short term in terms of that? 15 seconds now.
Yes, in the short term, it will be driving down electricity costs. Also, I'm going to build a database so that we can cut through red tape and permitting, and small businesses can see where their permit is so they can make better plans, and then hold hands with a Business Action Center. And
on that note, we're going to have to leave it right there for now. But our conversation continues right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York. New Jersey voters have a lot on their minds, and they have lots of questions for the woman who wants to move into the governor's mansion. So we're going to start, and you're going to hear the question, and then you can answer. So Colin from Hoboken says the cost of housing is out of control. Let's take a listen.
My question would be how you plan on dealing with the constant increase in housing prices and the tax burden that takes for the property taxes. Because a lot of people live their whole life in a town, they raise their kids there, and then they're forced to move when they have to retire, or you don't move to that town until your first kid is 5 years old, and you basically only get to you own there, but you're technically kind of just renting there because you can't afford the tax bill once your kids are out of school.
So Colin wants to know if you can do anything about high housing costs and property taxes.
Colin has really narrowed in on exactly what I hear as I go across the state. How unaffordable New Jersey is, and people, the first place they focus on is often housing costs, rental costs, and property taxes. So as far as housing, I'm going to beef up the first-time homebuyers program because for so many people, I hear from young people who can't get into that first home. They lose bid after bid because housing prices have gone up by 50% in the last 5 years. But also I'm going to take on those landlords who are colluding now to raise prices. In fact, that is one of my opponent's biggest donors, is somebody who's being investigated for doing just that. So I'll take on those prices to drive them down. But at the same time, he's right. You get into your home and then property taxes go up every year. So I speak to seniors on a fixed income who are struggling with just this. They don't want to move out of Jersey.
So does this have to do with your plan to make schools less expensive by having...
Well, it's certainly schools. It's certainly the state health benefits plan, which will drive property taxes down. But at the same time, for seniors specifically, as he was mentioning, it's the stay in the anchor programs so that we can help seniors stay in their homes.
Okay, we're going to stay on the topic of affordability. Sean from East Orange and Amy from Scotch Plains have this to say.
Mikie Sherrill, I would like to know about affordable housing.
I'm wondering what your ideas are for increasing supply and access to affordable housing for families.
Affordable housing for families.
That I also hear about because at every level people are just priced out. And so that's why we have opportunities to build more affordable. But this is an area that the state has to take greater action in, because I'll tell you what happens now is what's called builder's remedy. So we see so many luxury apartment buildings going up with just 4 or 5 affordable. So we need both market rate to help start to drive down costs, but then with affordable, I'll have state zoning laws so that people can help have ADUs on their properties. Some of our churches and faith areas want to build affordable on their properties. We also have opportunities in VFWs and Legion halls where they want to build affordable for vets, and I've helped on some of those programs as well. So in all these ways, addressing both the affordable housing problem and some of the market rate housing problems.
In order for them to build the housing, though, are you going to have to give state grants to help them do it?
We're going to have to both rezone in some areas, and those were the specific areas I was sort of mentioning on, and New York's doing some of this successfully, but then you're going to have some state support for it if you're not just going to build a bunch of luxury apartment buildings.
I get it. So on to families. Harpriya from Weehawken has this question. Let's take a look.
I would like to ask the governor if you have any provisions for childcare, if you can make childcare more affordable in New Jersey.
Or your favorite issue?
Yes. So I have 4 kids, and I will tell you, finding childcare was hell. I mean, I don't think that's understating it or overstating it, especially with your first child. And you can't find a place. First of all, just finding a place that takes infants is really, really difficult. And then if you can find a place, it's often out of your price range. In fact, I was often paying more in childcare than I was earning, which didn't make sense at the time. I heard that from my husband several times. But nevertheless, if I had made a different choice, I don't think I'd be in Congress today or running for governor. So it really is important that we help families. It's a workforce issue. It totally is. And so that's why, as we were talking about, tax incentives for businesses that open up child care centers to help their employees, ensuring that we have the child care workforce and drive costs down there by helping them work as they're earning credits. And then as we see some of the model being changed because we have, as we're pushing into universal pre-K, helping push in supports for some of those infant centers, which are really needed.
So Aiden from Irvington has a question about what's going on in Washington.
What is your plan for, I guess, kind of warding off any sort of economic impact from a government shutdown or like recession or anything like that?
To know what you can do to blunt the economic impact of the shutdown.
And that's the other thing we were sort of talking about, is this economic devastation that the Trump administration is creating. I often call the tariff program a worldwide extortion scheme, because as everyone here is paying more, we see Trump making $5 billion. We've seen the deficit go up an inordinate amount, over $1 trillion in the shortest period of time ever, and yet we're still seeing costs go up. So that is why I will be in court. We've seen success there. The Trump administration canceled some Title I funding. We clawed that back $200 million. So I will take them on again if they try to freeze this Gateway Tunnel money, as the president said he's going to do, because that will be illegal with congressional appropriations. And then at the same time, we're just to sort of defray the attacks from Washington, we're going to have to make Trenton function better so we can continue to drive innovation. Finally, working with the Northeast Corridor. And, right now we're seeing, because of RFK Jr.'s attacks on healthcare, there's a coalition in the Northeast of governors who are acting together to make sure people can still have access to vaccines. There is still good medical data. And I've already heard we have in both Massachusetts with Governor Healy and here in New Jersey, we have a lot of the pharmaceutical base. Some of them are saying, we're not sure how we're going to get new drugs to market without the FDA. So working in conjunction with the governors so that we can continue to create innovation and new pathways in our states.
Well, having said that about the president, I think you're going to be interested to hear this question. Steve from New Jersey wants to know this.
My primary question would be the ways that you plan to stand up to the regime of Donald Trump.
How are you going to stand up to President Trump?
So when it comes to, for example, his threat to terminate the Gateway Tunnel, I will be in court. I will join the tariff lawsuit immediately, along with the other states who are taking on the president, because this is really a congressional mandate and the president is usurping authority there. I'll also stand up to him in our courts. Right now, for example, he has a U.S. attorney in office that is there illegally, and we see an attempt to do a lot of political prosecution. So we saw that this U.S. attorney went after the mayor of our largest city, and then when the tapes came out, had to withdraw that, but then immediately went after a sitting member of Congress. So in all of these ways, standing up for the people of New Jersey against this administration.
But I need to ask you this question, though. Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, has figured that it's not always a good idea to poke a stick in his eye, and she's tried to meet with him to try to come to find some common ground. Is that something you would also try?
I'm willing to work with anyone when it comes to, supporting the people of New Jersey. I'm willing to work with anyone. I'm also willing to I'm willing to stand up to anyone, which I've done with even members of my own party. So it's kind of an and both as I fight for people in New Jersey.
Okay, and now to Stephen, who's also from Jersey City.
What are you going to do for cannabis in New Jersey?
What do you mean by that?
As far as the laws, are they going to be tampered with? Are they not? Is regulations going to go up further? Are they not?
So Stephen wants to know about weed. What are you going to do to change any of the regulations if you are?
Everyone in New Jersey wants to see the laws changed. The legislature feels as if they haven't really gotten the law right there. The cannabis companies feels as if the law isn't right. So some of the kind of low-hanging fruit is the THC drinks that are now unregulated and being sold in 7-Elevens, ensuring that young kids don't have access to cannabis products, making sure we're doing better enforcement, because I've heard from some mayors concerns about in bodegas, very young kids are getting access to edibles that look like candy and their parents don't realize it's not. And then at the same time, addressing some of the home grow provisions, which I'm supportive of, and then ensuring that we have better regulations around cannabis where it can be sold. And in that way, and the reason the cannabis industry wants it is because they want to legitimize their business.
So are you satisfied with where the money is going, the revenue from pot sales is going, or would you change, maybe take some of that revenue and use it for some of the things you want to do, like maybe mass transit or your housing initiative or your childcare initiative?
So some of the cannabis money was really supposed to go into more provisions ensuring that kids didn't have access to it. So that hasn't happened. I'd like to see some of it going where the legislation was saying that it would go to. But then, of course, if we can have more revenue to put into a lot of the programs we want to see statewide, I'd welcome that.
It's pretty tantalizing to use it as a revenue source. Okay, Rob from Hoboken has a question about your record.
Why didn't Mikie Sherrill graduate with her Annapolis class?
There you go.
So I did not tell on some of my classmates, and so I didn't graduate with my class, but I did get commissioned. And I went on to serve for almost 10 years in some of the highest positions of trust, and most recently earned the highest civilian honor from the Navy for my work on the Armed Services Committee.
Alexis from Hoboken wants to know about the cost of college.
How do you plan on making tuition more affordable for everybody?
This is really important because we've actually seen a lot of the federal money being withdrawn from things like Pell Grants, which help a lot of first-time college students attend college. We've also seen restrictions on the amount of federal loans you can take out, which is really impacting our ability to grow the doctors and the workforce there because it's not enough money to complete your medical degree. And then all of the attacks on visa holders and coming to our schools. We had grown the best college and university system in the world, and the president is attacking that. And what that means to affordability is that many of our international students paid full freight and really defrayed the costs for U.S. students. So in all of these ways, we are seeing attacks on affordability in universities from the federal government. And so at the state level, we are looking across the state to ensure we're driving in some of the state programs so that first-time college students can have that support, ensure that we're still getting public-private partnerships and some of the innovation to fund some of the colleges at the graduate student level as we continue to drive down costs at the student level. And in New Jersey, costs are still far too high for colleges and universities.
Last question. Andrew from Saddlebrook wants your thoughts on this.
What do you think about the plastic bag ban?
The plastic bag ban.
Yeah, you know, I will tell you, I am fine with some of the brown bags and the traditional bags, but plastic bags, if you go in any of our cities in the winter, you can see trees just full of plastic bags. They're in our waterways. We have plastics in our waterways. We have them, like I said, in the trees. So I am not a big fan of plastic bags.
So a question I'd like to ask you before we end the program is this. There's a big concern about the rising number of anti-Semitic incidents in New Jersey, and I wonder how that relates to what seems to be a new sensitivity and growing sensitivity and support for the Palestinian cause at the expense of Israel. There seems to be a trend to be concerned about what happened in Gaza and to not be so concerned about what happened on October 7th in the attacks on Israel. I wonder where you come down on that and how you think you can change things in New Jersey in terms of anti-Semitic incidents, and also, you know, the concerns that people are changing in terms of their sympathy for Israel.
You know, I think there are some people that see it as an either-or. Either you support ending the famine in Gaza, or you want to, you know, you're appalled at what happened on October 7th. But that is not how the majority of people see it. I think in New Jersey, most people see October 7th as the atrocity it was, that sexual assault, torture, hostage-taking should never be tools of war. And at the same time, famine should never be a tool of war either. So I think most people are quite comfortable with both of those things and think the famine in Gaza needs to be addressed. And then at home, I think there is also a real concern in a lot of communities for anti-Semitism and speaking out on it.
Some people think that the whole controversy gave rise to more anti-Semitic incidents.
I think that's true. I think we've seen more anti-Semitism throughout New Jersey. We saw a rise in it even before October 7th, but we've certainly seen a huge uptick in anti-Semitism in the aftermath. Things like, you know, graffiti and spray paint. When little kids were in Sunday school at a synagogue around me, and then people kind of attacking it. We've seen it in some of the online stuff. I've seen horrible online things, kids wearing electric tape like a Hitler mustache as they're attacking other kids and bullying them for being Jewish. I mean, that's something that I'm shocked. I really, maybe I shouldn't be, but I am. So addressing that has been something I have done from day one, both holding roundtables with students and rabbis, but then in the aftermath of some of the testimony on the Hill, to bring our colleges and universities together to say, what are you doing to make students feel safe? How are you ensuring that there are not anti-Semitic incidents on your colleges and universities? And I think in New Jersey, that has been something taken very seriously. And I'll tell you, we've often met with presidents of colleges and universities so we could help them work through a community issue and continue to meet with rabbis. But in talking to the Jewish Federation, and I know this is some of what they've expressed too, is I think we have to have, we can't just be talking to each other. Right. I can't just talk to other rabbis and we're in violent agreement that we want to end anti-Semitism. We need to bring a lot of empathy into this, and I think that's something that we're all working to do. But I'll say this, I think, is something that divides my opponent and I, because I saw one of my supporters, not someone in my inner circle, but somebody who is a group that supported me, have somebody that made some anti-Semitic comments, and I called it out and I said it was unacceptable and called on that person to be fired, whereas Jack Ciattarelli had someone who he called, somebody in his inner circle who made anti-Semitic comments, and then he led the round of applause for that person and then still refuses to call that person out.
Do you think also there has to be more education?
I've long been a fan of more education. I've supported some education in line with some of the work with D-Day events and stuff like that to talk about the Holocaust and send people to have that connection there to understand how that goes. And in New Jersey, we have Holocaust education. It's not always, not all school districts are following that. So I do think that's very important as well.
Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me, and thank you at home for joining us as well.